I'd like to properly welcome Mr. David Siegel.
Thank you. Loving Chicago as well. Okay, so we talked about community when we first started. I guess my first question is, has anyone ever been to a meetup event or as part of a meetup group? Mr. Dad, what group are you in? .NET group, yeah. JavaScript group, yeah. Woo! Okay, so 3 different meetup groups you've been a part of. Anyone else ever been a part of any meetup groups or went to a meetup? Yeah. Okay, ATL Tech, right. We have over 6,000 people in the ATL Render actually group, which is pretty awesome, really amazing, successful meetup group. And you? Nice, Winston-Salem Women in Tech. I love it. Okay, great. And Nate?
I had LA JavaScript,
Uh-huh.
and also Seattle JavaScript. I was living there for a little bit.
This man loves JavaScript. Okay, so double JavaScript meetup groups. So for people who don't know, and this may actually surprise you, I'm going to tell the origin story of Meetup very quickly. Meetup was founded because, believe it or not, of 9/11. So on September 11th, I'm the CEO. I took over for the founder about 5 years ago. Our founder on 9/11 was in a complete state of shock, just like everyone in New York, around the United States, around the world was in just a total state of shock about how could this possibly happen. He was in the lobby of his building. He didn't want to be by himself. And he went over to someone and he said, hey, what floor do you live on in the building? And the person said that he lives on the 5th floor. And Scott Heiferman said, hi, welcome. He said, I also live on the 5th floor. And the person said, I can't believe we never met before. He met another person who also lived on his floor. I guess there were a lot of, not a very friendly floor. And he looked at the person in the lobby and he said, it shouldn't take tragedy to build community. It shouldn't take tragedy to build community because unfortunately, there are a lot of people who feel connected to communities because of problems, because of challenges, because of the negative. How can we build community for the positive? How can we build community for positive things like women in tech, which is a positive thing, although you could say maybe it's built on the challenges that women in tech have had in the past, unfortunately, and building upon that. So we actually went back to his home, and he went on and he had a whiteboard, believe it or not, in his home, like he was a real entrepreneur. That's a real entrepreneur, have a whiteboard like in your home. And this is his 3rd company he started, and he started making the etchings of Meetup. And he said he's going to be different towns and different topics around different events all around the world. And that was the idea of how Meetup started, specifically because of 9/11. Our numbers are kind of staggering. We have 60 million members at Meetup worldwide. Thanks for moving up. I love it. 60 million members worldwide. We're in every single country but one country. Who wants to guess one country we're not in right now? We're in China. Anyone else? Russia. We're in Russia. We're in Taiwan. Where else? North Korea is correct. It's the only country that we are not in. We're in every single country around the world, Iran, Iraq, you name it, every country but North Korea today. We're maybe talking to Dennis Rodman. Apparently he has some relationship with the high commander or whatever is over there. We're not really going to go into North Korea, but it would be interesting. And we have over 100,000 meetup events every single week, including in the amazing city of Atlanta, Georgia. So anyone, who here is from actually Atlanta? Anyone here? Okay, Atlanta's like an amazing meetup city, actually. We have over 2 million members in just the city of Atlanta, over 2,000 groups. We have 14,000 meetup events every single week. And actually, this is kind of cool. We did this whole data analysis to see what the friendliest city in the entire United States was. And we released a report about which city had the most people who are looking for connections, looking for friendships, looking to meet people. And the #1 city in the entire United States was actually, believe it or not, Atlanta, Georgia. I know, right? And then there's some other cities as well that are listed here. But it's pretty interesting. And if you go online, you can find the analysis that we did. I mentioned beforehand, there's a Render meetup group. So if anyone here is not a member of the Render meetup group and wants to become a member of it so that you can find out about all the events, Render meetup groups are in 6 different cities around the country. And they also have online events. They're in California, they're in Texas. I guess, Missouri, I'm not sure which area that is, in the DC area, and in Florida, and of course in Atlanta, Georgia. If you're interested, you could scan the QR code. I have QR codes all over the place in this thing, and you can join the Render meetup group. Okay, who's this guy? Who is it? David Letterman is correct. David Letterman ran for like 20 years, had one of the most viewed talk show hosts back in like 90s, 2000s, maybe even like 10, 15 years ago. And he was famous for always having in every single one of his episodes, of his shows, he had something called a top 10 list. You remember that? Remember that? The top 10 list of David Letterman. So we're going to do right now the top 10 lists of community and why community strategy is so important. Sound good? Okay, here we go. Number 10, loneliness. So the Surgeon General recently released a report, roughly about a month ago, on the state of loneliness and calling it a true epidemic. To give you an idea, it is actually more dangerous, loneliness is more dangerous than, get ready for this, scientifically, than smoking 2 packs of cigarettes every single day of your life. It is more dangerous to be lonely. Why? Because loneliness causes anxiety. Loneliness causes depression. God forbid, a million times, loneliness can even cause self-harm, things like that. It is more dangerous to smoke 2 packs of cigarettes a day than be lonely every single day. And loneliness is rampant. 46% of people, not sometimes, not occasionally, but ready for this, regularly feel lonely in the United States. You could be in one of the biggest cities, New York, Atlanta, LA, and be the loneliest person in some of the biggest cities. In fact, there's greater levels of loneliness on a percentage basis in big cities. Not that Winston-Salem's a small city, it's a big city, but it's not like, a giant city like New York, than in Winston-Salem's, the world, which is really striking that you could have more people around you and actually be more lonely. And there's good reasons for that as well. And here's the scary one. Among people who are Gen Zers, that's where the loneliness epidemic is even more dangerous. 62% of people who are in their late teens, early 20s are regularly lonely. And look at how when you're older, right, people, the boomers, thank God I'm not a boomer quite yet, but I'm a Gen Xer, there's much lower levels of loneliness. And it's because there's been so much changes that have occurred in infrastructures and systems around community. And hopefully that's going to change at some point. So in this report that was recently released, every single metric got worse over a 20-year period. Every metric, there's just 3. There's like 100 metrics in there, just showing you 3. Every metric got worse. So what do I mean? Social isolation, especially related to the pandemic. It was increasing, went through the roof, average of 24 hours per person, greater per month, of just total social isolation. Connections to family, less than it used to be. Companionship, hanging out with friends, hanging out with companions, 14 less hours per month than there was previously. Every single metric, and we're talking about hundreds of metrics here, has declined over the last 20 years in terms of loneliness and why community is so important. And we talked about kind of the shape, the circles around community, that you have different infrastructures, whether, the challenge is that participation in churches, mentioned the church community, is like all-time low, all-time low. Synagogues, mosques, temples, all-time lows. People who are part of communities, like part of PTA communities, parent-teacher association communities for the dads in the room, or moms in the room. It's really a challenging situation. So number 10 reason for community is what? Say it loud and proud. Loneliness is number 10 reason of why community is so important. Number 9, leadership. So we talked earlier about some of the communities that you're in. And one of the greatest things about community is it gives you an opportunity to become a leader. You may not be a leader in your job, you may not be a leader in your family, you may not be a leader in different things, but you can be a potential step up in a leader. And I'll tell you the story of Omar Acosta, because it's a really beautiful story, and I know him personally quite well. So he lives in Fort Worth, Texas, And he's an introvert. Who else is an introvert here? I'm not, but already. Who else is an introvert here? Okay. Things are tough for introverts, right? Things are a lot harder for introverts in terms of community. He's an introvert, and he started playing video games. Nothing wrong with video games, but unfortunately started an addiction to video games. And he started playing an hour a week, then an hour a day, and then 2 hours a day, then 5 hours a day, then 10 hours a day. He wasn't leaving his house. All he was doing was playing video games and just eating in front of video games and only playing video games all the time. His brother was scared. His parents were scared. His brother grabbed him out and said, you need to go. You used to love rock climbing back when you actually left your house. We're going to get you to a rock climbing group. He went to a rock climbing group. He loved it. Loved it. He went back again, rock climbing group again. Then the head of the rock climbing group said to Omar, I'm moving to another city. Hope you don't mind. Can you take over this group? And Omar was like, me? Like, I've never led anything in my life. How could I do that? He took over. Since he's took over about 10 years ago, there's been over 900 events. 6 different marriages, not even a singles group, have come from his group. Married people, non-married. And the impact that he's having, he was never a leader his entire life, and now he's a leader. Now he's a leader of a community, which is beautiful. Especially around communities, particularly, and leadership is particularly important, I think, around female leadership. Particularly important because there's been so many challenges stacked against women, and by the way, also people of color, for many, many years, and why community is so important in those groups. And I'll tell you the story of Alicia Allen because she's actually from Atlanta. And I love her. She's awesome. She's so amazing. Here's Alicia's story, actually. And I have a podcast called Keep Connected, and she was on my podcast, by the way. That's how I know her. So Alicia loves reading. And she wanted to find a book group, so she went on a meetup. She went on a meetup group, and she went to the first event. And the book happened to be the book called The Help. Ever seen the movie or read the book, The Help? Famous book, amazing movie, book, incredible. And she was there, and she was the only black woman there. There was 10 other women. And some of the women said something to the effect of, oh, I think the book is an exaggeration. And said things like that. And she was just like, oh my God, this is not like the people that I want to have a book club with. This is not for me. This is not for me. She went to another group, and it just wasn't for her either. She's like, fuck that. I'm going to start my own group. So she started a group called Mocha Girls Read in Atlanta, Georgia. She had 5 people, 10, within a month, she was having 20 or 30 women in Atlanta coming to her group. Okay? Now she has, by the way, 9,000 members of her group. And get this, 16 different cities around the country. Wow. Think of the mini movement that she started. 16 cities. So she goes to Florida, to I don't remember where in Florida it is, but she goes, I think it's in Miami. She goes to Miami, Florida. She goes to Philadelphia. She goes to LA. She goes to she starts something in the UK now of Mocha Girls Read books where it's solely kind of black women who are building relationships with each other. Actually, it's so cute. She started I don't know what the name of it is, but a man's version of it as well, and they've had some co-events and stuff, and some people have commit, which is kind of nice. But that's an amazing story about leadership. She had never been a leader. She's a major introvert through community as well. Really nice story. Okay, next story I'll tell you is one of the things I do is I go around to different cities, and I meet with meetup organizers in different cities because we have lots of organizers. I was in Palo Alto, and this guy came over to me, and he said, I have to tell you this story. I'm like, great, love stories. And he said, I'm the organizer of 2 meetup groups. One of them is a bowling group, because I love bowling, right? The other one is a career networking group. But here's the crazy thing. I got my last 2 jobs from my bowling group. And I met my best friend at the career networking group. What does this tell you about community? Community not only obviously can help people find jobs, but it's the overlapping of the personal and the professional, right? You think you're going for a career thing. That could be, and it ends up being an amazing, you find your significant other. That's what magic happens when you're in community. You think you're going for, a hike with some random friends, and that could be your next job. You just don't know. And that's why just getting out and doing things is so important, and one of the things of what community, Meetup, or any other communities tries to provide people. So number 10 was loneliness. Number 9 was leadership. Number 8 is helping you find a new job. Number 7, mental health. I loved how the previous speaker, one of the things that she mentioned at the end, the CEO of Gooder, I don't know if you were in that session or not. You were in that session? Yeah, she mentioned at the end, like taking care of her mental health and gardening, which is definitely shown as something about like connecting to nature and connecting to the ground is very helpful for mental health for many people. For me, I'm not into it, but like I like yoga and running, that's my thing. But mental health is so important for community. So what do I mean by that? Look, there's examples of different groups here, but in the bottom right-hand corner, actually a friend of mine, a colleague that I used to work with, was diagnosed with breast cancer about 5 years ago. Thank God she's fine. She had a very different than typical treatments to help her along. She moved to Houston, and when I got the job for Meetup, she called me up, and she didn't call me, because no one calls anyone. She texted me, and she said, I have to tell you, I'm a Meetup organizer. I'm like, I didn't even know. And she said, yeah, I run the Houston Cancer Support Group, Breast Cancer Support Group, and I'm devoting all my time and energy into helping other women kind of deal with breast cancer and look for alternative treatments. And it's so important, mental health, having support around you. Alcoholics Anonymous is probably one of the greatest community infrastructures that exists possibly in the world. I mean, even stronger than churches and other types of things. It's so powerful for so many different people. And we have tens of thousands of mental health groups. In fact, there has been massive growth in the number of support groups on Meetup for different, like parents of ADHD kids and all the other different challenges that people had, especially during the pandemic. We saw a huge growth in support groups. We decided we would create an entire kind of community for mental health. So if someone's interested in finding different communities around mental health, online, offline, whatever, in person, then again, there's a QR code if someone's interested in that particular area as well, and a lot of content related to that. Oh, not too late. Let me know when we're ready. Okay, so that's the benefit of small group, right? When I'm in front of 1,000 people, I can't do that. I mean, I could, but it was like 99 people wouldn't be so happy. Okay, and as I said, support groups are up like literally close to doubling, since 2020. Learning. Okay, whether you want to learn Hebrew in China, or you want to learn Chinese in Israel, or you want to learn JavaScript, or you want to learn whatever the heck you want to learn, there's likely a Meetup group for you. We just had the largest Meetup event in our history a few weeks ago. It was an intro to ChatGPT, and we had 18,000 people sign up for that event. There's a lot of people to one event. And it just tells you the power of and people's interest in like learning more about ChatGPT. And again, one of the great things about community is learning. Like you're dad, right? Sir, you're dad. No, that's okay. That's great. You're a yoga person. Like the ability to be in a community and to learn from other dads and to learn yoga. If church is important to you like it is to Nate, learning Bible or whatever the things happen to be, those things are so much better when you're able to do it in a community of people than when you try to do something on your own. We did a poll, actually we didn't do a poll, University of Pennsylvania did a poll and they found that 90% of members increased in knowledge and skills because of Meetup. Okay, number 5, helping to grow your business. So a lot of us here are focused on growing businesses. I'll tell you, Brian Armstrong is the founder and CEO of Coinbase. You all know Coinbase, right? And when he was interviewed and asked, how the hell did you start this thing? His response was, I just went from one Meetup event to another Meetup event, and I talked to lots of people to figure out what the big problems were in blockchain and cryptocurrency, and that's how I figured out what to do. I used Meetup as my entire research department. That's what I did. And I was like, damn, I got to tell that story. So that's pretty cool, right? But people use it all the time. Like Flatiron School is a coding school. I don't know if anyone's ever heard of that. It's a coding academy. So Flatiron School's largest lead generation, they get more leads from Meetup than anywhere else. Because what happens is they create all those Meetup groups. They have speakers at the Meetup groups who went to the Flatiron School. And then people are like, I should go to Flatiron School too. So they've created like 20, 30 different meetup groups in different cities to actually grow their business. And they've gotten like hundreds of thousands of dollars of revenue, all because of using community to help to grow their business. So think about each of your businesses. Think about how community can help to grow your businesses, grow your revenue. And there's other examples. City Dads Groups is a great one if you're a dad. It was started by a couple of people who were tired of going to mommy and me classes and were full-time dads. And they were just frustrated, and they were like, enough of that. I want to start like building my community of other dads who are full-time stay-at-home dads, because it's so difficult for a lot of people in that situation. Okay, number 4 benefit of community is finding a life partner. One of my, there's a guy that works for me. This is his 3rd time he's now working for me. I was the CEO of Investopedia before this, and I was the president of a company called Seeking Alpha. This is now his 3rd time he's working with me. And he met his wife in a meetup, actually group, playing softball. It happens. And like I said before, some of the best events are dating events, but a lot of times best dating events and finding your significant other things actually have nothing to do with being single, are not singles events. So I try to tell people who are single, like, you don't only have to go to singles events. Go to non-singles events, and sometimes you can meet people who really share your passions. If you think about it, like, what's better, go to a bar and meet people? Or like, if you're really into photography, go to some photography thing and like meet people who share your passion around photography, share your passion around yoga. Because if they share your passion in yoga, the chances are there's other things that they might share your passion around, which is like healthy eating, taking photos of slides, that kind of stuff, Okay, number 3 benefit of community is helping people to make smarter decisions. Well, let me explain this a little bit. Decision making is a real passion of mine. Nate, I know his name because he grabbed me, he spoke earlier and he grabbed me. He's like, I read your book. And I'm like, oh, that's so cool. And it's a book about decision making. And I'm obsessed with kind of the process around how, and principles around decision making. But one key principle is really like surrounding yourself by people who are different than you. Like people use the word DEI and diversity as like jargon, but like it's so important in like actually making smarter decisions in business and life decisions by having people with different perspectives than you. If you're a founder and you're a salesperson and you need to have like someone who totally thinks differently, that's a tech person. You're a tech person, you're an extrovert, you want someone who's more of an introvert and thinks differently than you. And if you're someone from a certain socioeconomic background and you have a business that's for lots of different people, then you want people of very different backgrounds, socioeconomic, race, gender, age, etc. All of that makes for smarter and better decisions. Community surrounds you with people who are different than you. It causes nonlinear thinking, it causes non-group think. It's so important and ultimately results in better decisions. I don't really care, I swear, but if anyone wants a copy of my book, I have a couple of copies that I brought with me here. I'm happy to sign it, and you could get a copy that way. Number 2, last 2, accountability. Accountability. So one of my favorite meetup events I had ever been to is a group of mostly women. It was about 8, 9 women and one guy who were all PhD students. They were all writing their dissertations. One person was writing a dissertation on chemistry. Another person writing a dissertation on history. Another person on like thermodynamics. I mean, totally different topics, completely unrelated. But they needed an accountability partner. They needed someone that can be there for them and with them to help them to make sure that they're hitting their personal goals of what they're trying to accomplish. Community can do that for people. I gave the example of Alcoholics Anonymous. Alcoholics Anonymous is an incredible community that provides accountability for people not to do that. We mentioned, church, synagogue, mosque, temple, etc. There's accountability there of trying to go to some of the same places in community back and forth over and over again. This group of people, I talked to them afterwards, and a couple of women, they said to me, they're like, we would not be as far along in our PhDs if not for people who are egging us on. And if we don't, and they meet every single day, 5 days a week, just to write together. And if someone doesn't show up for a week or two, they call them up. And they're like, where have you been? What's going on? We need to take care of you. We need to take care of each other. So what does community drive? Drives accountability. Super important. This is actually a nice story about a guy who desperately wanted to get back to tennis. He was super into tennis. He joined a meetup group, and he has accountability, an accountability partner, and being physically fit and doing tennis. Number 10, the last and possibly I would say the most important reason for community is friendship. Is friendship. So at Meetup, the number one search term in 2018 and 2019 was tech. Ton and ton of tech groups. The second highest term that was searched was hiking. Ton of hiking groups. Friendship wasn't even in the top 10. For 2020, it skyrocketed to the number one most searched term, finding adult friends. 21, same thing. 22, same thing. 23, same thing. The desperation, the need out there for friendship is so palpable that for our entire history until 2020 was not in our top 10. And now, for every year, it's been overriding everyone else in terms of friendship, taking over as the top search most term on Meetup. 25% of people don't even have one confidant that they could go to in a time of need. 1 in 4 people don't even have one confidant to go to in time of need in terms of friendship. Half Americans have 3 or fewer close friends, which is, again, that's why community is so important, because it drives these kinds of friendships. And then there's, Meetup, where we focus really big time on friendship. I'll tell you a story about the top right-hand corner. There's an article in the New York Times that found, this is pretty crazy, that they did an independent study of women over 50. My gosh, that's me in a couple years. I'm not a woman over 50, but man over 50. That they actually lived longer and healthier lives because of their Meetup groups that they joined. Not because of Meetup, it's not Meetup, it's community. It's because the people that were in their community, it actually caused them to live longer and healthier lives. They follow them with them. We have now something called Member Plus, which allows people to be able to find and connect with friends as well. So just to sum up, and then we'll wrap it up, number 10 reason for community is loneliness. Number 9, leadership. Number 8, finding a job. Number 7, mental health. Number 6, learning. Number 5, altogether, business growth. Number 4, finding a life partner. Number 3, smarter decision making. Last 2, number 2, accountability. And the number 1 most important reason for community is a thing that so many of us are seeking. Thank God many of us have, but you can never have enough. You can never have enough. And it's friendship. So hopefully this conversation was helpful. If anyone wants, they could send me an email, david@meetup.com. From a LinkedIn, shoot me over a LinkedIn invite if you'd like. It's very easy to find me. You literally just type in like David Siegel Meetup or Meetup CEO, or whatever the heck you want, into LinkedIn. You'll find me over there. And I hope that this was somewhat helpful in just helping you to really appreciate the importance of community. And one of the things about Render is that this is a community. This is a community, and I hope that everyone takes advantage of that, throughout the sessions. So again, if anyone wants a copy of the book, I do have to charge for it because I have to pay for it myself. But then feel free to let me know, and I'll be right outside. Thank you. That's it.
David, thank you. This concludes.